Okay, hey everybody. So people have been asking me to do this for a while, and I just haven't had a really good time to go and do this. So I have a block of time this morning. So can we criticize liberalists? Yes, we can. Yes, we can. So that being said, let's get right into this. Oh, hey Sam, good to see you, man, as always. So let's get into this. So I was going to just go to their website, but they have basically nothing on their website. And it's just, I don't know, there's not really enough to go through here. So we're going to go through this stream. I don't even know who this guy is. V? Is that kind of like Re? I don't know. I'm going to try to keep my jokes to a minimum. Because people have been asking me stop making fun of just mocking Argon. So, just stop making fun of Sargon and actually address his points, which I think is fair. So, what is my core criticism? What is my main criticism of liberalists? I think, and we'll see this, and I'll repeat this throughout, to have a liberalist society, you need a police state. At the very least, you need to actively repress democracy, but ideally to make it function as much as it can function, you need a police state burgeoning on a totalitarian society. Let's see here. So, yeah. So that is the kind of on the outset, so let's just go through this. Also, they don't define their terms, really. They don't really explain how anything would work. The issue is it's a rationally constructed ideology. So broadly speaking, there's a couple different types of ideologies. There's ones which are what I'd probably call pragmatic idealism, which are they take an ideal and they try to achieve it through pragmatic means. There's ideologies that are completely, I guess you could say, self-interested or make no real appeals to idealism or to an ideological background. And then you have what I'd call rationally constructed ideals, which is where you come up with a bunch of first principles and you try to force them onto reality, if that makes sense. And it's kind of indifferent to the realities of the situation. What's kind of held to be paramount is your idea. And there's very much a lack of concern for if it's possible, etc. It's to a certain extent making the perfect the enemy of the good, or the good the enemy of the perfect. So you can't have like under Sargon's thing, you can't really have a mixed society, kind of like America, where you have these kind of classical liberal principles and the state tries to achieve them as best as possible, but understands that compromises have to be made. And in this, I find it's very absolutist. So let's get into this, etc. So let me know, because I'm probably going to talk over him a bit, if the audio balance is okay. Romanian accents are the weirdest, because they're kind of a mix of a Latin and a Slavic accent, and I can never tell what they are. Oh, okay. Okay, this is cringy. Let's move ahead. Okay, let's go back. The word skeptic comes from. Okay, I'll try not to make fun of his accent. It's like the lowest of low hanging fruit. I'm trying to think what's lower hanging fruit, that or attacking feminism. Because most like serious Christians who aren't like non-denominational don't take it seriously. Like I've only met, I think, two I've only met, I think, 2 Catholics who are young Earth creationists. Like, you have to get into, like, the rattiest of rad trads who hold the position just largely out of signaling to get into Catholics who... Oh, my whole volume's very low. Really? All of it? Let me see if I can turn it up a bit. I already have it near maximum. Let me see. Just up this a little. There we go. So, yeah, like, I've never met anybody who takes the whole thing seriously, who isn't just, like, an uneducated evangelical. Video audio is low. Okay, I've turned that up. It should be all right now. So, let's just go on.
Schools. They were basing this argument on the fact that God is real and the Bible is his word, as well as this little gem right here.
Wait a minute. Okay, well, that could be anything. I don't know what that means exactly. Okay, the Bible is real and it's God's word. Like, I remember recently they did a study in Iceland where they're like, do you believe God made the world or do you believe in the Big Bang? Well, given that the Big Bang was formulated by a Catholic priest, I don't know. I'd probably still put Big Bang.
Do you like being on the cutting edge of knowledge? The Bible has always been years ahead of scientists. It's one of the most advanced science books around.
No, it isn't.
Well, isn't this just a tiny bit convenient, isn't it? Because now if you're someone that is in favor of evolution, that doesn't believe the Earth is just 6,000 years old, you're not arguing against the creationists who made the claim, you're arguing against Jesus. And if you argue against Jesus, you will always lose, because Jesus is Jesus and he's always right. And by definition, you're wrong.
But that is, I don't know, young Earth creationism, I have it at the absolute maximum it can go. I don't know actually how to make it louder. We'll see if that makes it louder, but it's hard to get. So is that any better?
A lot of YouTubers were starting to point out that they're a little...
Like, once again, it's kind of a straw man. They basically took, like, the dumbest people they could find, made them representative of the entire community. Like, young Earth creationism is kind of a new concept. They'll point to some people being young Earth creationists, like, hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And the reason that it was more popular back in the day, particularly during the early church, was people had no idea how old the Earth was. Can you lower your own volume and boost the master volume? It's kind of as high. Okay. It's as high as it'll really go. I don't know. I'll see if that helps at all. What was I talking about again? Something involving... Right, so people thought that it's... people thought the world was 6,000 years old because the kind of sciences that would determine the age of the Earth didn't exist previously. Like, we didn't have tectonics and kind of that kind of thing. We didn't have modern astronomy. We didn't have modern biology. So people had no idea how old the Earth was. So, like, it might as well be 6,000 years old because there's not really much evidence anyway. But this is off the point.
Bible is actually written by God, that God exists and that he believes the Earth is 6,000 years old, and they were asking for proof to me that this is the case. I'm skeptical. And this is how the label of skeptic was applied to some YouTubers who had the audacity to talk against creationism. Now, the label was
that's so brave.
cemented during the Gamergate phenomenon, where you had feminists arguing with anti-feminists. Feminists were saying that all gamers are sexist, racist, homophobic.
I'm trying to think. Okay, so Carlton Banks asks, young Earth creationism isn't that common from the people I've seen around me. Is this true for the rest of you? No, there are no young Earth. It's the meme. Now, the irony is most Muslims reject evolution as a matter of faith, but have you guys ever seen a so-called skeptic address that? I haven't.
Transphobic, and they were basing this on the experience of women everywhere.
Well, they should be. but they aren't.
So yet again, you have a similar situation where if you disagree with the feminists, if you say that gamers aren't sexist, you're contradicting women everywhere. So you're basically you against billions of people. Billions of people can't be wrong, therefore they're right and you're wrong. So yet again, people were skeptical. It's like, if this is the experience of women everywhere, can I see a poll, a statistic, a study? No such thing was brought forward. So yet again, the label of a skeptic was cemented. It's people who didn't believe creationists. It's people who didn't believe the claims of feminists. But as you can see, the problem with this label is that it doesn't show what the person stands for. It just says that the person disagrees with feminists. Doesn't really show what type of person he is, his ideology, his position or views on the world, or if he even wants to enforce his views on the world. It just says that, okay, this is a person who's against feminism. And this is the reason that the new label of liberalist comes from. Because some of the people who were against creationism and some of the people who are against feminism are also liberal.
No, I have no idea who Jay Dreyer is. None.
And they have their own ideology. Now, the reason that the word liberal wasn't used is because it already has a negative connotation. Now, liberal today isn't the definition of the
oh, that's cringe. That is cringe.
That people like myself have advocated on my channel for over 3 years now. It has been co-opted by the progressives. And when you say liberal today, for an American it means affirmative action. It means hiring a person based on skin color in order to fit a diversity quota, which is something that people like myself are heavily against. So
why? Okay, there won't be any actual arguments against it within this.
Had to be found. Fortunately, it's not a new word. It's already in the dictionary. Liberalist is a person who is promoting classical liberal views to the world. I know activist has a negative connotation, but this is what it is. It's a person who believes liberal ideology to be better than any other ideology, and therefore he is trying to convince other people that this is the case.
What the hell do Plato and Aristotle have to do with classical liberalism? I don't know.
He's trying to put forward his arguments for liberalism and to persuade people who don't believe it to change their mind. This is what a liberalist is. So the word is actually supremacist. This is why it's funny when feminists say it's about equality. No, like feminism comes from female, right? Ist supremacist. Like you're a supremacist in the female ideology. And this is the same with, I guess, pretty much any other ist. Communist. They believe that communism is the superior ideology and they're trying to apply it to the world. So liberalist believes that liberalism is the superior ideology and he wants to see the changes he advocates for being reflected in the world. The second thing that was discussed is why is there a need for...
Now, the irony is they've actually changed this. So, this video, like, they completely altered this. Like, I don't get it. Okay, so he's talking about liberalist principles, and none of this exists on their website anymore. None of it. They literally got rid of their principles and rewrote it. So, I guess they aren't very principled.
Liberalists. Why the new activism? Because the world is filled with activists. People don't really like them. Why this particular ideology needs to be pushed? And the reason is that if you watch my channel, you will see video after video where I show you things that are completely unfair, things that are completely messed up, either from academia, from the private sector, or from politics. And any person who sees one of these videos, they're going to get a bad taste in their mouths. For instance, the case of Count Dankula, who is now facing trials over a joke, and he might even face a prison sentence. This trial has been going on for years now. The poor man has been dragged to court a couple of times. The media turned a spectacle out of it. And anyone who watches it is going to say, okay, that's not fair. That's actually fucked up. Pardon the French, but it is. The issue is that while people watching this, they understand that it's not fair, and they understand that this shouldn't happen. From what I noticed, a lot of them can't articulate why it's unfair. They can't articulate why it shouldn't happen. They don't really understand the principle behind it. And understanding the principle behind why something shouldn't be makes you a lot better in a debate, gives you a much better understanding when talking and explaining it to another person. So one of the important activities that liberalists are going to intake is to talk about principles. Now, the importance of principles comes from the fact that every policy is going to derive from a set of agreed principles. And knowing those principles is important because you get a better understanding of the world around you. You get a better understanding of that particular ideology. And everything is going to make sense once you understand principles. For instance, if you're talking with a communist and he says that capitalism is oppressive, you will notice that he doesn't necessarily give particular examples of names of people who have been oppressed by capitalism. The reason he doesn't do that is that the principle from which he says that capitalism is oppressive is the fact that he doesn't believe in private property. He doesn't believe in acquisition as a legitimate way to transfer property from one human to another. So when you go to the baker and you pay him money to purchase a loaf of bread, you are de facto oppressing the baker's
What does
workers.
this have to
You
do
are
with
oppressing
anything?
farmers
Okay,
who
this is
have,
too
farmed
cringy. I'm just gonna
in
have to
order
move
to
ahead.
get the grain required.
Oh, okay, we're
to
almost
make
at
his product.
liberalist ideology.
So now understanding this, you will understand that the communist is actually watering down the word oppressive, and he has a completely different meaning for the word than that of what normal people have. So let's talk about the principles that liberalists have.
Thank God.
And by doing so, you will not only understand how the people of this ideology think, but you will also get a better understanding of how I view the world. I know a lot of times people say that I'm copying Sargon, or that me and him are talking before making videos or stuff like that. In reality, it's just that we have the exact same principles because we're a member of the same ideology. And it has happened over the course of the years. I would talk about the specific video, and then I would watch This Week in Stupid, and I will see that Sargon spoke about the same video that I did, and he had the same analysis and the same point.
Get to the liberalist principles.
So
please.
first, let me explain why I think the liberalist principles are superior to that of any other ideology.
Well, apparently they aren't superior because Sargon deleted them all and rewrote them, like a week after they were posted. So apparently they weren't that superior.
The reason is that it benefits everyone within a nation.
Do we even still have meritocracy? Nope, they got rid of meritocracy, they got rid of blind justice. Guys, we have these eternal unchanging principles that we're going to completely delete and change 2 weeks after they're posted. That's very promising.
Other ideologies, for instance, Islam, people who propose Sharia law understand that Sharia law is only going to benefit Muslims. According to Sharia law, people who are atheists are going to be beheaded, people who are gays are going to be stoned to death, and people who are the kafir are going to be treated as inferiors, and they're going to be treated with contempt. Thus, it is the duty of the kafir, the atheist, and the gay to band together and to advocate against Sharia.
Why? Why is it?
Another ideology that isn't similar would be communism. According to communism, people need to have an equal amount of wealth. Now, there's two ways of making this. You either make everyone poor or you make everyone rich. Now, since making everyone rich is impossible, making everyone poor is suddenly a thing you can do. Which means that the people who have something to lose and they're not homeless and they still have like a house with 2 rooms and they don't want one of the room to be given to a homeless person are going to...
But isn't this assuming that people only base their decisions and their values on personal pragmatic economic gain? I mean, if that was the case, communism wouldn't exist. Communism and socialism are middle class ideologies. They don't come from the working class. In fact, in most countries that have a socialist and a conservative party these days, the working class votes for the conservative party. Like in Israel, the Labor Party is the class of the the party of the upper class, and the working class votes for Likud. So it's just not the case.
Going to start advocating against communism. So you kind of get the gist of it. Same with feudalism, I guess. Feudalism only benefits the highborn. They benefit the royals. While the people who are peasants, the people who aren't highborn, are going to have a reason to oppose.
Feudalism is not a political ideology, or at least it wasn't before like the 2000s. Feudalism was just a system of organizing society that developed over a lengthy period of time. It's not like a rationalist political ideology.
Feudalism. So the main reason, again, is fairness. It's a concept that I also have is if you don't like something done to you, don't do it to other. Now, let's talk about the principles themselves. So one of the reasons that people don't like the fact that Count Dankula is going to be arrested over a joke, and they don't like the fact that he has been dragged through the court systems for years, is because it violates the principle of freedom of speech.
Okay, does it say anywhere here why this is good? Like, okay, because here's the thing. When we look at the Constitution, and I brought this up a number of times, the Constitution holds that these rights are self-evident and come from nature and nature's God. So these are inherent things you possess by virtue of being human, and they come from God himself. There's no explanation of where these rights come from other than the fact that Sargon and his friends have a personal subjective preference for them. That's not an argument. That's just saying I prefer this. But does he make a point at it? Let's see if they make a point at any group where this is like what this is justified by. Because if we want to talk about kind of my principles, I could point to biology, I could point to sociology, I could do rational arguments. I don't think there's any arguments here.
He's being arrested for something that's called hate speech. But the fact is, hate speech is still free speech.
Why?
Any speech that is political should be permissible.
Why?
You do not want to let a person dictate what is hate speech and what is free speech.
Why?
Because you just gave that person complete control over the way people can express themselves.
It's not complete control, though. It's control in that particular instance. Because, like, when Napoleon came to power, the only group he politically purged, to my recollection, was the Neo-Jacobins, because they were a fundamental threat to society. I don't think when he became emperor, he purged the royalists or, like, the liberal conservatives in the same way.
The way people think and they form ideas is by listening to others around them. By censoring people around them, you are going to get a person to be unable to form correct opinions and correct ideas.
Whoa. Correct opinions and correct ideas. But isn't that what hate speech laws are about? Is banning people from forming incorrect opinions and incorrect ideas? So, once again, this is kind of the problem with liberalism. Any ideology based on unlimited human freedom runs into the issue of having to either repress or otherwise, I don't know.
This is a way of treating people like infants, as if people can't have a mind for themselves and they can't differentiate bad ideas from good ideas.
Oh, what is a bad idea and a good idea? Like, have they at any point established what makes a bad idea, what makes a good idea? What makes because they have these principles, but what is the end goal of these principles? Is it a happier society? At least with Richard Dawkins, I think it was, he said human flourishing was the goal of his principles. So that's at least a standard that you can evaluate things against, but there's no standard here.
Which is why I am against that concept.
Why? What?
I am for free speech.
Okay, but I think communism is a bad concept, so I want it banned and it prevented from being propagated so people can form right ideas which are not communist. So the end is exactly the same. It doesn't really explain why the means matters in this case.
And as you can see, all people should enjoy the right to voice political ideas,
Why?
no matter how controversial, without suffering political consequences. This can include financial penalties, legal exclusion from the political system, incarceration, or any other form of punishment for expressing a point of view. No political idea can ever be considered as incitement, abuse, or harassment in and of itself.
Okay, let's just talk about this. But a lot of them are. Like, the political idea of the current Ontario government is if a parent won't let their kid undergo transgenderism, then that kid is taken away from the family. So that idea is apparently, according to him, not a form of violence. That's not. Islamists' desire to impose the Quran as the society, as the law of the land, is not an incitement to violence or abuse. Communist desire to eat the rich is not that. Okay, so that's good to know. These are important.
This is something that Antifa does when they say that because Nazis use certain political ideas that can incite to violence, by beating Nazis they are actually engaging in self-defense.
See, I actually agree with that. I think Antifa is right in that context, because they at least they get it. It's they're acting in their rational self-interest against the political enemy. Because let's be honest, if Natsocks were going to come to power, do you think that they'd leave the Antifa people alive? No, they wouldn't. So it does make sense.
It's just horseshit. And it's horseshit because we know the principle. Freedom of speech is guarantee of dissent.
Why?
In times of necessity against any prevailing authority, political orthodoxy.
What about your authoritarian political orthodoxy? Because to do this, you're going to have to force this on people. So, I don't know.
That would otherwise refuse to be challenged. No speech should be compelled. And in other words, yes, this is very controversial, which I'm about to say, and the fact that it's controversial is why we need liberalism.
Why do you need liberalism?
Who are racist?
Okay, I just want to turn to the chat. Has he at any point established why any of these things are good, desirable, or where they come from? Like, that. Here's my questions for the liberalists. Where do these principles come from? Are they based on nature and nature's God? Are they empirically proven to create a better society? Are they necessitated for human flourishing? Do they make people happier? I need some kind of justification for these principles. That's number one. Number two, you have to kind of, I don't know, you have to justify the statements you're making. Like, what is political orthodox? What is any of this?
And say the most vile, racist shit. Even they should be left alone.
Why?
Unless they're acting on the racism, unless they're actually doing what they are saying, and it turns from speech into action, I don't...
No, but speech is a form of action. Okay, like, let's take an example. If you show young kids hardcore pornography, it's going to permanently alter their brain chemistry and their psychological makeup. It just is. That's the way it works. So that is a form of speech that is actively physically harmful against people. So if you're opposed to showing little kids hardcore pornography, does that make you, in his words, an authoritarian? Does that violate liberalist? Does stopping kiddie porn, does that violate liberalist principles because that's a form of speech if no kids were directly harmed? Like, let's say they make kiddie porn where they digitally edit in the kid so they're not directly harassing the kid. Under liberalist principles, wouldn't that be permissible? But that's directly harming society. I don't know.
Don't fucking care. You can have, as was said on the stream, a guy with a swastika tattoo working at the DMA, but the moment a Jewish person comes, you stamp those fucking papers. Okay. I have absolutely nothing against this.
Why? Isn't that no? But he just said here, no one can compel you to do anything. But he's just saying you have to. Okay, so we have freedom of conscience, freedom of thought, and freedom of speech. You can't be compelled to do anything, but the freedom of that is limited in situations where I want it to be limited. Like, and this is kind of what I'm getting to. If he's going to say, generally speaking, personal freedom is a good thing, like that is okay. That is an argument, and you can say, okay, well, I think it's normally good, but there's logical restrictions on it. It's what I call it is it's not a suicide pact. I think broadly speaking, most of what's laid out in the American Constitution is a good thing, but it's not a suicide pact. If you have to choose between the survival of the society that allows this to exist and sticking to like the autistically to the letter of the law, then yeah.
Right. So as a liberalist, I advocate against punishing people for wrong thing, because at the end of the day, what this is going to turn into is a thought.
And once again, we'll see this throughout. Wrong think includes people who oppress opinions against the liberalist order. And the fundamental problem with all of this is it assumes that nobody will vote you dudes out of office and pass laws that go against it. Because, like, most people don't think this way. So, what if a group of people come to power in your liberalist state and pass a constitutional amendment saying, no, we don't want commies? What are you going to do then? And like I said, like, this would work, I think, under a police state.
Police society, where people are going to try to delegitimize ideas based on what someone said 6 years ago in order to prove, haha, they're a racist, therefore they don't have a platform anymore. I don't think this creates a just society.
What does a just
Another
society
principle
mean?
is that of meritocracy.
Why?
Meritocracy is really important because it makes sure that a society is going to have the best man suited for a job.
What does that mean? What does meritocracy mean? Does that mean morally suited? Does that mean overall suited? Does that mean intelligence, skill, experience?
And there's no other way you can do it. If you're going to
Why?
hire people based on skin color, you're going to obtain skin color. If you're going to hire people based on merit, you're going to obtain merit. And if you're going to hire people based on genitals, you're going to obtain genitals, right? So I think people want a society.
No, but the concept of merit that the left has is that these identitarian characteristics are an inherent good, and part of the merit for the job flows out of the concept that these things are an inherent good and necessary.
That has merit and has value, which is why the principle of meritocracy states that.
But they think they have value.
The context of their character.
What does that
Promotion should
mean?
be on the basis of achievement and should not unduly inhibited by innate.
Okay, but they think that being female is inherently an achievement.
Characteristics. Nobody is entitled to receive benefits they did not earn,
Whoa.
which they are not already entitled as being a citizen. The reason is that.
What does that even mean? No one's entitled to receive benefits they did not earn unless I think that they did not earn.
When you're a citizen, you pay taxes, and thus the benefits you receive are earned. They're not given by the state.
Well, what if you're on welfare and you don't pay taxes? They're not earned then. So is his point of view that welfare only can be given to people who don't pay pay taxes, which would exclude people on welfare? Or is his idea that people on welfare will pay an income tax on their welfare? So even though all the money is coming from the government, the fact that they're giving part of the welfare payments back to the government, I don't know. I don't follow.
This is not to be misrepresented as declaration against social safety nets or health
Why?
care, but against individuals or
Because you like
claiming
those things.
unearned benefits, whether social or material, that they otherwise do not deserve. So, for instance, Black Lives Matter asking for reparations. This is horseshit. Okay, when the United Nations says, yeah, we need to give reparations to blacks, horseshit.
Why?
And you can.
How is I don't. Why is that wrong? Other than the fact that you dislike it.
Can now understand why it's horseshit. So when you're talking with someone about Black Lives Matter and you want to articulate why it's horseshit, you point up to the principle, meritocracy. Now, again, take into account.
Okay, here's how it would go. You see, meritocracy is the reason that you shouldn't. Because of meritocracy, you shouldn't ask for reparations. Well, I don't care about meritocracy. Well, I don't know.
Stereotyping is not something illegal. You can still stereotype as long as you do not legislate based on the stereotype. You can still think whatever the fuck you want about other people, as long as you're not passing legislation or you refuse to hire people based on your stereotype.
Well, but what does that mean? Does that mean like you can't pass legislation against criminals because that would be stereotyping criminals? Okay, like that would also mean you can't pass regulations of banks because you'd be stereotyping banksters as the kind of people who would commit financial crimes.
Blind justice. This is something that America...
Okay, so there's been no justification or explanation of what meritocracy is.
Have depicted really nice in a way with Lady Justice being blindfolded
With this
and
crappy low-res picture.
Blind justice refers that each individual citizen will be governed by the same laws as their peers, whether applicable or not, without exception. If a law does not apply by virtue of an innate characteristic, then it is irrelevant until circumstances change and it becomes applicable.
Wait a minute, let me go back. What was this?
You're not passing legislation or you refuse to hire people based on your stereotypes. Blind justice.
Whoa. Refuse to hire people based on your on stereotypes. How is that enforceable? That's, I think, a good question. How do you know? Like, do you have to record every internal discussion? Do you have to, like, give people a polygraph test if they don't hire someone? Oh, the stream isn't buffering. Give me a second. Let me just try turning the bitrate down. Turn the bitrate down a bit and see if that helps. Is the entire thing still just not running? Let's see here. Okay, I think it's fixed a bit. Let me know if it's just completely unwatchable. So it seems like my internet's having troubles, because internet in Canada is just notoriously terrible. I've never really been a place in Canada where the internet is reliable.
This is something that Americans have depicted really nice in a way with Lady Justice being blindfolded and having a sword. Blind justice refers that each individual citizen will be governed by the same laws as their peers, whether applicable or not, without exception. If a law does not apply by
okay, I think the stream is working
virtue
again.
of an innate characteristic, then it is irrelevant until circumstances change and it becomes applicable. So no more, like laws, for instance, that I, as a liberalist, would disagree is the paternity laws that always gives the child to the mother, for instance. Right?
Okay, now, I actually do think rule of law is good. And I think equality before the law is good. I'm not going to go into that right now, but I don't necessarily disagree with this in principle.
You look and you see that judges, in 90% of the cases, give the child to the mother. This is not blind justice. The judge is very aware of the gender of the person that he is giving the baby to. The media is supporting this, and on a principle, I disagree with it. Now, I don't know how this could be fixed, because at the end of the day, the judge is clear to make its own decision. However, I do feel it's unfair. I think the best way to settle kids after a divorce would be to look at both of the families, the parents' income, their way of life, and then make a decision, not make a decision based on gender. Okay, this has a vagina, we're going to give... I completely disagree with it.
But isn't that the judge's personal preference?
Blind justice also refers that you're not going to discriminate people on race, people on gender, people on class.
What does that mean? What is discrimination? Does that refer to private decisions, government decisions? I don't know.
On wealth, right? So, if it's happening...
How do you know?
If you can point out, okay, V, but in society, no, look, people do discriminate. All right. That means it's not a liberalist society. It means you have moved away from liberalism.
That's not a liberalist society. So this ideology I invented, a society's not conforming to my invented BS ideology, so therefore it's bad.
And it needs to come back to where it should be. Lady Justice needs to be blind. She doesn't need to see. Because the moment she starts seeing, she is not Lady Justice. She is Lady Injustice, or Social Justice says.
Oh.
Social Justice is very aware. Her eyes are wide open. Someone needs to make a depiction of that because it's really cool. Right, so another one is secularism. Must be separation between religion and state.
Why? Because you like secularism?
Religious institutions must not be able to exert political power on the state for the goal of promoting religious beliefs.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. What does that mean? So, does that mean, is it like Mexico where clergy aren't permitted to wear their clerical garb in public? Does it mean that, like, I'm just trying to think of what this means. Does this mean that if a church says vote for this policy or we take this social position that they're not allowed to say that? Because, like, in Catholic churches, they'll often tell you vote for, or when you're voting, consider the right to life. So if my priest were to say, when you vote, consider the right to life, does that mean he's interfering in the state? What if people vote based on... What if people vote based on their religious beliefs? No, people should vote not based on their religious beliefs. Well, then what do they vote based on? And also, what does a theocracy even mean? Because, in a sense, it depends how one defines religion. I mean, is religion simply your worldview? Because I could argue that this is a religion, because he's saying these principles are absolute, and there can't be any questioning of them. They're just inherent goods. Basically, they de facto come from not God. So I'm trying to think of, like, how to describe what this means, and what does a religious state mean? Because people always talk about a Christian theocracy. The closest thing we've had to a Christian theocracy is like the bishoprics and stuff, but the bishoprics were basically just run as feudal states with clergy appointed archbishops who just functioned in a similar fashion to a secular lord. So I don't really understand what that means. And the Catholic Church has always taught a certain degree of separation of church and state, that they are like two lungs of society, that they have different responsibilities, but that they're mutually important to one another. I mean, unlike Islam, the Bible doesn't lay out a specific form of government or legal code. So I don't even know how you'd have a theocracy.
All people must be allowed to worship privately or publicly.
Why?
As long as their religious beliefs do not interfere with the rights of others.
But that's every religion. That includes your religion. So I'm just trying to think. So, like, I'm pro-life. So my belief that it's murdering the unborn would conflict with the belief of other people who think it's not. So by his logic, I'm not allowed to believe that or try to pass laws based on that because it comes from a religious source, but people are free to kill the unborn because it doesn't come from a religious source.
This includes the ability to establish religious institutions and proselytize their faith. Nobody is free to impose their beliefs on others. All right, so the reason this should be is that people who are religious, you can't argue with them.
Whoa. I thought we were talking here about you can't... Wait a minute. He just said you can't base government on stereotypes. So right here he's saying, okay, so we can't base government on stereotypes. The state can't persecute people because of their beliefs. But we're saying religion doesn't belong in the public sphere because you can't argue with it, so based on my stereotype.
They have the principle because God gave them, and that's final.
No, that's not how Catholicism works. So that's not how we work at all. If anything, we place... Well, I guess in Catholicism you have tradition, which is the top one. Then you have reason and philosophy, which is the second one. And then you have the Bible, which is kind of third, because the Bible is not really supposed to be a constitution. Excuse me. It's just not. That's not what its purpose is.
You can't have a conversation. You can't debate on anything, right? They have their beliefs because God says so.
But no, you can. I like this is just a massive like stereotype. Has this person ever talked to like a Christian who's not like a shit tier evangelical who just goes, "It's in the Bible. You gotta believe it because it's in the Bible." Like, has he ever talked to a Catholic, an Orthodox, even just like an actual Protestant? I don't know, like a Calvinist, a Lutheran, an Anglican. Like, go to like Catholic Answers. Go to any like decent Catholic website. They will post article after article arguing their principles without reference to the Bible. The fact that they have debates with atheists, like, it's just, I don't know.
Fuck you. Which is why these people should never be allowed to legislate.
They should not be allowed. Wait a minute. They shouldn't be allowed to legislate. So, like, is he going to give a test to people? So it's like, do you believe in God? Yes. Okay, then you're not allowed to legislate. So is he saying here that they're going to bar people with religious beliefs from running for office? Because that's what he said, isn't it? Let's hear that again.
It's free to impose their beliefs on others. All right. So the reason this should be is that people who are religious, you can't argue with them.
You can't argue.
They have the principles because God gave them, and that's final.
Nope.
You can't have a conversation.
You can't talk to them. You can't.
On it.
Like, because every day if people try to talk to me, they're like, "Hey, Argent, could you pass me the salt?" I'll be like, I don't want to, you can't talk to me about the salt. God put the salt there. You can't move it. Or they'd be like, "Hey, Argent, can you make a note of this?" They'd be like, "No, God told me not to make a note. You can't have a conversation with me."
Anything, right? They have their beliefs because God says so, and fuck you. Which is why these people should never be allowed to legislate.
I think that's pretty clear. You can't legislate if you have religious beliefs. You just can't. So I guess they have to give a test to everybody who takes office in any capacity.
Based on their faith. Just because you're a member of a faith doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to go into government, but you shouldn't be able...
But he just said I don't know.
...to allow the church as an institution to become the government like you see in the Middle East, for instance. Now, what does it mean...
Okay, so he's saying if anyone... But, okay, like, if you're not allowed to have religious principles, then what do you base your ideas on? I don't know. You base it on liberalists.
About, as long as their religious beliefs do not interfere with the rights of others. Well, for instance, in Romania, I have the right to drink alcohol in public if I want. If I want to go to the park and drink a beer, this is the right that I have as a Romanian citizen. Now, if a Muslim comes along and he has a Sharia patrol and tells me not to drink because it's against the Islamic faith, he is violating my right. Right? He is now using his religion to oppress me, and I'm not part of his religion.
What? So it's just him, like, okay. He's oppressive. There's something a friend of mine came up with called Naked Man with a Gun Libertarianism, which was something a libertarian said to him, and he said, "Look, if I want to, I can walk around naked holding an AR, and if anybody's like, could you put some clothes on, I can shoot them because they're oppressing me." And that's kind of what this sounds like.
Which is why, based on the liberalist principle, he is actually committing a crime. I think it's even...
Wait a minute, he's committing... I thought we just said that freedom of speech exists and you can espouse the most hateful ideas possible. So if some dude comes up to you and it's like, "Don't drink, it's against the Islamic faith," that's a crime.
A crime in most countries. It's the crime of vigilantism.
Okay.
Another reason why you say that you are allowed to worship as long as your religious beliefs do not interfere with the rights of others. It's for Romanians, for instance, eating pork and drinking alcohol on Christmas. This is a Romanian tradition. It's rooted in Orthodoxy, in Romanian Orthodoxy, right? Every Christmas, you're going to slaughter the pig.
Wait, whoa, but I thought we weren't allowed to do anything based on religion. Wait a minute. What? He just said we need to keep these things legal based on Romanian orthodoxy. So, okay, so it's okay to protect these legally protect Christmas because it's based on Romanian orthodoxy, but it's not okay. Let's just listen to that again. That doesn't.
You say that you are allowed to worship,
Okay.
as long as your religious beliefs do not interfere with the rights of others. It's for Romanians, for instance, eating pork and drinking alcohol on Christmas. This is a Romanian tradition. It's rooted in orthodoxy, in Romanian orthodoxy, right? Every Christmas, you're going to slaughter the pig, and you're going to have pig meat. I am not interfering with the rights of others if I do it in my own home. This is not a religious activity that influences anyone else in any way, what I do in my own house. Therefore, it can be permissible. I do not influence the culture of the society by me doing so.
What? How is celebrating Christmas not influencing the culture of society? So, okay, so now he's saying any religious thing that influences the culture of society. So, like, churches, by nature of having architecture, are part of the culture of society. So do all churches have to be underground? Like, so people can't see them? Does that mean, like, you can't have hymns? Do we have to ban all Christmas ads? Like, are these guys against Christmas being a holiday? Like, or Easter being a holiday? Because in most Western countries, Christmas is a holiday. And you get the day off work.
And it was actually a funny case where Romanians slaughtered the pig in their backyard in America, and the SWAT team were horrified to see so much blood and a woman pulling the guts out of the pigs in order to make sausages. I can understand why, these clashes can occur. Which is why, it's important to point out that the religious traditions do not need not to interfere with those of the host country.
What?
Okay, so
Whoa. They can't interfere with those of the host country, so I don't know. I'm not even gonna touch that.
Economic freedom, I don't think I need to explain this.
Why?
Countries that have economic freedom are wealthy nations. Just look on the index map and you will see that the countries that restrict economic freedom are poor, and the countries that allow economic freedom are incredibly wealthy.
Oh, but what does that mean? Like, I don't know, but Japan and Korea and Taiwan restrict economic freedom because they're developmental states and they're wealthy. I don't know.
Democracy is a really interesting one.
Why?
I was speaking with a historian friend of mine, and what I found out, something that bewildered me, but it's absolutely true when I verified it.
Okay.
Nations that have democracies rarely start wars.
No, that's a lie. What about World War I? What about the Civil War? What about the Franco-Prussian War? What about the Franco-Prussian War? What about the Napoleonic Wars with Britain and France? What about the Mexican-American War? What about the Spanish-American War? Basically, what they do is they cherry pick what they count as a democracy. So, okay, so Imperial Germany doesn't count as a democracy, despite the fact that it was a democracy, because we don't want to count it as one. We don't want to count, like, they just don't count things. We don't want to count pre-World War II, pre-Imperial Rule Society Japan as a democracy, even though it was a democracy, because we don't like it. So they just will cherry pick what they count as a democracy, using very, very specific criteria.
They start wars less frequent than nations that are totalitarian.
No, but they
what's
do.
Really interesting, and this was just baffling.
Complains about American Western countries starting wars, says that democratic countries don't start wars.
Nations that are democratic almost always win wars. Like, almost all of the time, if you have a democracy against a non-democracy. Like, take, for instance, Athens versus anyone else. Only the Spartans
But Athens lost to Sparta.
Managed to defeat the Athens, and it's because they had like a really professional military, and that was like the exception. But they managed to beat everyone else. Why is this? I think the reason that this is because humans that live in these nations, they feel enfranchised. They feel that they have power and they have a say in the way their country is governed, so they will fight harder. This is just my opinion. But again, look at history and see democratic nations versus non-democratic nations. And every time a democratic nation wins, you pull it on a piece of paper, right? And then every time a democratic nation loses versus one that's not democratic, you put it on another piece of paper.
So the Soviet Union was a democratic nation when it beat Nazi Germany? That's good to know.
And at the end, draw the line, count them, and you will just see how many victories democratic nations have against dictatorships. It's astonishing, honestly.
You have to cherry
pick
pick
this.
this.
As I said before, if you live under a democracy, the chance of your nation going to war is quite slim.
No, it isn't. That's
still
not true.
happens, okay? Which is why America probably found a loophole. You can drone strike. If you're the president of the United States, you can drone strike other nations without having to declare war. Honestly, no, it's just astonishing. Like, on paper, in theory, America could drone strike Germany if it wanted. It will cause an intent.
Okay, the drone striking thing is such crocodile tears. It's such crocodile tears. It's like, oh, they killed these terrorists using drone strikes. It would have been better if they had invaded the country and saturation bombed everything.
It's a national incident. It will probably have war declared, but still, it is possible. It's like the legislation is just mindfuck. Right. So finally, universal rights is what I
like. Why is killing terrorists in a way that doesn't involve saturation bombing and large-scale ground assaults less moral than saturation bombing and large-scale ground assaults? So, like, is he suggesting it'd be better if we just invaded Pakistan?
I said. Now, this is not an exhaustive list. There's going to be more. The rule of law is also something that needs to be added when people say, oh, we need to tear the Constitution because it's just a piece of paper. And you have, I believe Richard Spencer said it, Antifa said it, the Islamists said it, the Constitution is just written by man, let's replace it with the Quran because that's written by God.
Sorry, Richard Spencer said that you should replace the Constitution with the Quran? I don't remember that.
No, absolutely not. Right, so now that we've gotten through the principles and we gotten through the name and the reason why this is needed in order to...
These principles are needed, that's why we're going to delete them and completely replace them 2 weeks later.
Try and, I suppose, push back against the injustices that are happening in the West.
What injustices? What are you talking about?
It's not just Count Dankula, but it's, for instance, like £3 million given to activist organizations that are promoting 6-year-olds to become transgender.
But what? Why are you objecting to that? That's
that kind of shit. What exactly are we going to do about it? And by we, I mean liberals. Well, the first one is this website is going to be a little bit expanded. As you can see right now, it's still almost completely bare. We're going to have blogs where we write down our ideas. People can read them. There's going to be a subreddit as well.
Let's see. Let's look at these blogs. Oh, okay. There's not going to be blogs. It's not going to be an archive. There's not even going to be a set of principles that last more than 2
for
weeks.
People to be able to communicate and collaborate and talk about different activities.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about the activities, this is, I believe, the biggest step, the one that's going to make a little bit more impact than what we did until now, talking on our YouTube channels, which is to have live events, right? So basically, a live event where we rent a room, an auditorium. People are going to pay tickets, and they're going to go there, and they're going to see us live. We're going to talk about it, and it creates a different impact when you see people actually out there in the world. It creates a different vision, a different image when you see that people are actually mobilizing and they're willing to support this ideology, rather than just some people on the internet that YouTube can censor whenever. I honestly don't see what can come wrong from this, because the worst that can happen is that people aren't really interested, people aren't really engaging, and I guess I will just have traveled to these events and met other cool YouTubers and speak with you guys, my subscribers, you know, and that's going to be that. And for me, that's still a win. You know, even if this is not taken seriously, even if people will ridicule it, mock it, and it's not going to take anywhere, at least I will get to see my subscribers and get to hang out with you guys, and for me, that's
okay. So this is great. Okay, so let's see here. Watch a stream, didn't complete this video. The question is, should they bake the cake or not? Stargun stances they should. I disagree with that. It can't support something which incorporates that. If the cake is already baked, you shouldn't be able to deny the right of someone to purchase it. Why? So they don't believe in freedom of property or freedom of association. I don't get like why they're against freedom of association, but they're for freedom. I don't know. Let's see here. You should be able to get service. I don't know. They have the right. Those are anti-freedom of association laws, which people like you are in favor of. Yeah, they're against freedom of association because they don't like it. So, yeah. Anyways, that is my response to the Liberalist Manifesto. Hopefully that makes sense, and I will talk to you guys later. Have a good weekend.